Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to go ahead with the third module, that is cost of capital. First, let us understand what is cost of capital. Cost of capital is the cost incurred to acquire capital. Okay, for every business, if you understand, we require capital, and this capital that we get is through various sources of capital like debt, equity, preference, retained earnings, bank loans, and many more sources through which we can get capital. This capital that we get is not free of cost. We have to pay something to get this capital. So what do you pay when we collect capital through debt or a loan? We have to pay interest. When we collect the capital through preference shares or equity shares, we have to pay the dividends on it. And if we collect capital through retained earnings, then we have to incur something called as an opportunity cost, which we will understand in the further in the module in the further classes. Okay, so once again, cost of capital is nothing but the cost incurred to acquire capital is called as cost of capital. So let's understand the various types of capital. Okay, before going to that, the cost of capital is also called as the minimum required rate of return. Okay, that is the minimum rate that any project should earn, because it is the cost that you incur, and whenever you invest into a project, the returns that you are going to get from the project should be more than the cost. So the cost of capital is also called as the minimum required rate of return on investment, which is very important. Now let us understand the various types of cost of capital. There are totally four types of cost of capital. One is cost of debt, cost of preference, cost of equity, and cost of retained earnings. Cost of debt is the cost incurred for collecting capital through debt. Debt means it may be a loan, it may be a debenture, okay, or some more forms of debt. Preference is cost of preferences. Basically, when we collect capital through by issue of preference shares, we incur the cost on preference shares. Cost of equity implies the cost that we incur for issuing of equity shares. And retained earnings, these are the earnings or the reserves that are kept aside from the profits, and these earnings can be used later in the form of capital. So what is the cost incurred for retaining the earnings is dealt in the cost of retained earnings. So totally there are four types of cost of capital: cost of debt, cost of preference, cost of equity, and cost of retained earnings. These are called as specific cost because they deal with individual cost like debt, preference, equity, and retained earnings. So they are called as specific cost. Later in the module we are going to study the overall cost, which is called as the weighted average cost. So let us not worry about that right now. Right now, let us go to the specific costs and try to understand each of these costs individually. Okay, so let's move to the first one, that is cost of debt. Now, what is cost of debt? It is a cost incurred to acquire capital through debt, loan, or debenture. It may be a debt in the form of a debt, it may be in the form of a loan from banks or financial institutions, or it may be debentures that are issued to the public. So, further, debt can be divided into two parts. It may be a irredeemable debt, or it may be a redeemable debt. Now, what is irredeemable and redeemable? Irredeemable debts are the debts which cannot be cancelled or which do not have a maturity period. I'll repeat: irredeemable debts are the debts which cannot be cancelled, which cannot be or which do not have a maturity. Whereas redeemable debts are debts which can be cancelled after a particular period of time, or they have something called as a maturity period. So the difference between redeemable and irredeemable is irredeemable debt do not have maturity period and they cannot be cancelled, whereas redeemable debts have maturity period and they can be cancelled. So with this basic idea or this basic theory related to cost of debt, let us move ahead with the different formulas that we use under cost of debt. So as we said, Irredeemable debt. Irredeemable debt can be of three types, or it can be issued in three types. It can be issued at par, it can be issued at premium, or it can be issued at a discount. Now what is this par, premium and discount? Par means if the debentures are issued at the price, at the face value. If the debentures are issued at the face value, then it is called as issued at par. For example, a company issues debentures of rupees 10 each at par, means they are issuing debentures of 10 rupees at 10 rupees itself. They are not adding anything, they are not deducting anything. So if the debentures are issued at the face value, then we call it as issue at par. Whereas if the same debentures, let's say company issues debentures of rupees 10 each at rupees 15, that means you are charging something extra. So it is called as premium. So if you issue a debenture more than the face value, it is called as issued at premium. And opposite is the case with discount. Issued at discount means if the company issues suppose a company issues debentures of rupees 10 each at rupees 5 each, that means they are issuing it at less than the face value. Face value is 10 rupees, but they are issuing it at 5 rupees. Then we call it as issued at discount. Okay, so a debenture can be issued at par, or it can be issued at a premium, or it can be issued at discount. So I'll just repeat. Par means at the face value. 10 rupees debenture is issued at 10 rupees itself, so it is issued at par. 10 rupees debenture, if it is issued at 15 rupees, then we call it as a premium, more than the face value. And 10 rupees debenture, if it is issued at 5 rupees, then we call it as discount, or less than the face value. If it is issued at less than the face value, then we call it as a discount. I hope you are clear with this concept of par, premium and discount, which is very important. Now let's go to the formulas. First is irredeemable debt issued at par. Now when it is issued at par, normally there are two formulas that we use. Okay, first formula, very simple, it is KD. KD represents cost of debt. Okay, KD always represents cost of debt. So cost of debt is equal to R. Now what does R into 1 minus T? Now what does R means? R is the rate of interest. Very important. R represents the rate of interest. So if it is 10% debentures, then 10% becomes the rate of interest. If it is 12% debentures, 12% becomes the rate of interest. If it is 8% debentures, then 8% becomes the rate of interest. So R represents the rate of interest, whereas the T represents the tax rate. Now why is this tax rate very important? What is this 1 minus T? 1 minus T is after tax. Always remember, if you want to find out any value after tax, you have to multiply it by 1 minus T. Now why this is done? This is done because whenever you pay interest, you get tax deduction. You can show it as a deduction for tax purpose. So you get that advantage of paying interest. So you find out the cost after tax because of the advantage of paying interest, paying interest and deduction in the tax amount. So I'll just repeat it once again. If the irredeemable debt issued at par, the formula is KD is equal to R, that is the rate of interest, into 1 minus T. T represents the tax rate. There is another formula, or there is another formula for calculating the irredeemable debt issued at par. The formula is KD into KD is equal to I divided by NP into 1 minus T. Now what is I? I represents the amount of interest. Understand the difference here. Here it is R which represents rate of interest, whereas here I represents the amount of interest. Okay, so basically suppose, let's take a simple example. The debenture, if the company issues 10% debentures of rupees 50 each. So what is the face value of the debenture? It is 50, and it is issued at and what is the rate of interest? It is 10%. 10% debentures of rupees 50 each. So what would be I? I would be 10% of 50. So 10% into 50 will be 5 rupees. That is the amount of interest, that is I. Whereas what is the rate of interest? Rate of interest would be 10% itself. I hope you are clear with this difference between R and difference between I. R represents rate of interest, whereas I represents the amount of interest which we have to calculate. Then comes this NP. NP represents net proceedings. Net proceedings is nothing but the amount that we are actually going to collect by issuing that particular debenture is called as net proceedings. And T again represents tax rate. So 1 minus T is after tax. Okay. So let's understand these formulas using a simple problem. A company issues 10% debentures of ₹100 each. Calculate cost of debt if tax rate is 50%. Okay. So here what is happening? Company is issuing 10% debentures. Now what is this 10% debentures means? 10% is the interest on that debenture. So it is issuing 10% debentures. So 10% represents the rate of interest of ₹100 each. So 100 is the face value. Calculate cost of debt if tax rate is 50%. So 50% becomes your T or the tax rate. Once you've understood what is given, let's calculate the answer. Okay. Since it is issued, they have not mentioned whether it is issued at par, premium or discount. We have to assume that it is issued at par itself. Okay. So what is the formula when the irredeemable debenture is issued at par? It is KD into R is equal to R into 1 minus T. So what is R? R is 10%, which is given over here. So 10% means 10% is nothing but 0.10, and tax rate is 50%. So 0.10 into 1 minus 0.50 gives you. So how do you solve it? First solve the bracket. 1 minus 0.50 is 0.50. 0.50 into 0.1 gives you 0.05. That is nothing but 5%. That is 0.05 into 100 gives you 5%. So what is the cost of debt? Cost of debt is 5%. If we use the other formula which is given, or first is I. I is the amount of interest that we have already seen. So what does I means? It is 10% of 100 rupees. Always remember, interest is calculated on the face value. It is always calculated on the face value. So face value is 100. 10% is the rate of interest. So 10% of 100 becomes 10. So interest is 10. Net proceedings is how much amount are we going to collect from this debenture? We are going to collect 100 rupees. So net proceedings becomes 100 rupees, and tax rate is 50%. So 0.5. So if you solve this particular problem, simplify this particular equation, it is 1 minus 0.5 is 0.5. 10 divided by 100 is 0.1. So 0.1 into 0.5 gives you 0.05, which is 5%. Is similar to this particular formula. So whether you use this formula or whether you use this formula, you get the same answer. So this is your cost of redeemable debt, cost of irredeemable debt issued at par, means at the face value. Now let us understand the other two parts, that is if it is issued at premium and if it is issued at discount, what changes would happen. So irredeemable debentures issued at premium or discount. Now what is the formula over here? There is only one formula that we have, that is KD is equal to I divided by NP into 1 minus T. Okay. So the same formula that we have used in the previous problem, the same formula we are using here. Okay. So it is KD is equal to I divided by NP into 1 minus T. I'll repeat, I represents the amount of interest, NP is the net proceedings, and T represents the tax rate. So 1 minus T is after tax. I'll repeat, 1 minus T is after tax. So let's understand this particular formula with the use of a problem. Okay. Now this problem has all the three variants, that is par, premium and discount. So let's see this particular problem. A company issues 10,000 12% debentures. So 10,000 means the number of debentures which are issued, or the number of debentures which are issued. 12% represents again the rate of interest. So what is the rate of interest on these debentures? It is 12%. Of rupees 100 each. 100 each represents the face value of the debenture. So it is issuing 10,000 debentures of 12% interest rate, and the price per debenture is 100 rupees. Tax rate, if the tax rate is 50%, so tax rate given to us is 50%. Calculate cost of debt. So it is clearly mentioned that we have to calculate cost of debt if the debentures are issued at par, 10% premium and 5% discount. So here the problem changes. It's not only issued at par, but it is issued at premium as well as discount. So we have to find out the cost at par, at premium as well as at discount. So let's go ahead with par. We have already studied how to calculate the cost of debt at par. It is KD is equal to R into 1 minus T. So R is 12%, which is already given over here. So 12% is nothing but 0.12 into 1 minus 0.5, because tax rate is 50%. Okay, so the answer comes to 0.06, that is nothing but 6%. The same is done using the other formula, that is KD is equal to I divided by NP into 1 minus T. Okay, so according to this formula again, I is the amount of interest. So what is the amount of interest here? It is 12% of 100 rupees. 12% of 100 rupees. So 12% of 100 rupees gives you 12 rupees. So 12 divided by net proceedings. Now net proceedings is the amount that you are going to actually collect. Now it is issued at par. Par means at the face value. What is the face value? It is 100 rupees. So it is issued at 100 rupees itself. So we are going to collect 100 rupees. So net proceedings would be 100 and tax rate is 0.5. So if you simplify this, you get 0.06, which is 6%. It's similar to the other formula. Once we have understood par, let's understand premium. At premium means extra. Okay, premium is always charging extra. As we have already discussed, the formula is KD is equal to I divided by NP into 1 minus T. Okay, so here it's very important. I is always amount of interest, and I have already told you the amount of interest, or the interest is always calculated on the face value. So it is 12% of 100, which is 12 rupees. Okay, then the net proceedings, very important calculation. Now net proceedings will not be 100 rupees, because we are not issuing it at par, we are issuing it at 10% premium. 10% premium means we are charging 10% extra. So when we say 10% premium, what is 10% of 100? Because premium is always calculated on the face value. So 10% of 100 is 10 rupees. So 10 rupees plus 100 is 110 rupees. So this is how you calculate the net proceedings. 100 plus 10% premium. 10% of what? 10% of the face value again. So 10% of 100 is 10 rupees. So 100 plus 10 is 110 rupees itself. Okay, so net proceedings 110, interest remains the same, that is 12 rupees divided by 110 into 1.1 minus 0.5, because tax rate is 0.5. What is the answer that we get? It is 0.054 or 5.45%. Okay, next is discount. Discount means less than the face value. We have already studied that. So less than the face value means the formula again remains the same. KD is equal to I divided by NP into 1 minus T. So I also again remains constant, because I is always calculated on the face value. So what is I? It is 12% of 100 rupees. So 12% of 100 rupees is again 12 rupees. So I remains 12 rupees divided by net proceedings. Now what is the net proceedings? It is at discount. So it is 100 minus. Okay, if you remember, for premium we have to add, for discount we have to deduct. So 10% minus 5% of what? 5% of again the face value. What is the face value? 100 rupees. So 5% of 100 is 5 rupees. So 100 minus 5 is 95. So net proceedings would be 95 rupees. So if you substitute the values in the formula, it would be 12 rupees. That is the interest, amount of interest, divided by net proceedings is 95 rupees into 1 minus 0.5, because 0.5 is the tax rate which is given to us. Okay, so once you simplify this, the answer that you get is 0.631 or 6.31%. So the cost of debt if it is issued at discount is 6.31%. The cost of debt if it is issued at premium is 5.45%, and if the cost of debt issued at par is 6%. So if you see the pattern, okay, if you issue it at a premium, the cost is lower. If you issued it at discount, the cost is higher, because when you issue it at discount, you are incurring more cost, whereas if you are issuing at a premium, you are gaining 10 rupees over here, so your cost is reduced, whereas if you issue at par, it is the normal rate that you get from the issue of debentures. So always remember, premium will give you the lowest cost of capital, cost of debt, discount will give you the highest cost of debt, and par would be in between premium and discount. This is how you verify your answer. I hope you're clear with this particular concept of cost of debt, and in cost of debt we have studied only irredeemable debt. Again I'll repeat, irredeemable debts are the debts which cannot be cancelled. So in the next video we'll be seeing how to calculate redeemable debt. Thank you.